My mother cheated on my dad with my best friend after a fight, but my dad forgave her. Now my friend is writing to my girlfriend. My name is Jake. I'm 22. My dad, Mark, is 48. My mom, Lisa, is 45. My best friend, Matt, is 23. One night, after a fight between my parents, I went to Matt's house. I didn't knock. I never had to. I opened his bedroom door and saw my mom sitting on his bed, wrapped in a sheet. He was next to her, shirtless. They both looked at me. I turned around and left. My mom called after me, but I didn't stop. I got in my car and drove home. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep the wheel straight. I walked into the house. My dad was sitting on the couch, staring at the TV, but it wasn't even on. I stood there, trying to find the words to tell him. When I did, everything fell apart. I told my dad everything. I expected him to explode, to demand proof, to call my mom and scream at her. But he just sat there, staring at the floor. When he finally spoke, his words made me feel sick. He already knew. She had told him. He said it was a mistake. He told me people mess up, that marriage isn't perfect, that some things are worth forgiving. He talked about love, about vows, about how walking away isn't always the answer. He wasn't angry at her. He wasn't even angry at Matt. He just wanted to move on. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My dad spent my whole life teaching me about respect, loyalty, and family. Now he was throwing all of that away because he didn't want to face the truth. He always seemed strong, but now he just looked weak. I tried to make him understand. This wasn't just a mistake, it was betrayal. He barely reacted. He just kept repeating the same things, like he had already made up his mind and nothing I said would change it. The more he talked, the angrier I got. How could he forgive her? How could he let this go? He was supposed to be the one person in the world who would never accept something like this, but he did. I felt sick. I couldn't stay there any longer. I grabbed my keys and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind me. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to get away. I stayed in my room, staring at the walls, replaying everything in my head. My mom betrayed my dad with my best friend. My dad knew and forgave her. Matt, someone I trusted more than anyone, threw away years of friendship like it meant nothing. I ignored my phone for hours. My mom kept texting me, saying she wanted to explain. My dad called a few times, but eventually stopped. I knew they expected me to just accept this, to let it go like my dad did. But I couldn't. At some point, I checked my messages. Matt had texted me. He said he was sorry, that it just happened, that he didn't mean to hurt me. I stared at the words, feeling nothing but disgust. He didn't mean to hurt me? He slept with my mother. That wasn't something that just happened. It was a choice, and he made it knowing exactly what it would do to me. I texted him back. I told him we were done, that he wasn't my friend anymore, that I never wanted to see him again. He saw the message right away, but he didn't respond. For the next few days, I avoided my parents. I left the house when I knew they'd be home and stayed locked in my room when they weren't. I barely spoke a word to them. I didn't even look at my mom. If my dad could forgive her, fine, but I couldn't. Then, out of nowhere, I found out Matt wasn't done ruining my life. My girlfriend showed me the messages. Matt had started texting her. I was already struggling to process everything when my girlfriend showed me the messages. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. I saw Matt's name on her screen, a list of texts from him, and my stomach dropped. She told me he had been messaging her for days. At first, it was casual, asking how she was, checking in like nothing had happened. But then he started pushing it further, saying he needed someone to talk to, that he was feeling alone, that he regretted everything. He tried to make himself the victim. He even hinted that I was being unfair by cutting him off. She didn't reply to him, not once. She didn't entertain his pathetic attempts to get sympathy. She only showed me because she thought I should know. I felt something snap inside me. Matt had already taken enough from me, and now he was trying to get close to my girlfriend? I refused to let that happen. I knew I had to confront him. I sent him one message, telling him to meet me. He responded instantly, as if he had been waiting for me to reach out. He acted like he wanted to fix things, like there was anything left to fix. When I saw him in person, I didn't waste time. I told him straight. I didn't care what excuses he had. He needed to stay away from my girlfriend. I warned him not to contact her again, not to try to weasel his way into her life like he did with my mother. He barely said anything. He looked guilty, but I could tell he wasn't sorry for what he did. He was just sorry he got caught. I left him standing there, speechless. I didn't need his explanations. I had nothing left to say to him. But even after all of that, things only got worse. A few days later, my girlfriend started acting differently. She was distant, distracted. And deep down, I knew something was wrong after I confronted Matt. I thought that part was over. I told him to stay away from my girlfriend, and I meant it. But something felt off. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. The betrayal with my mom had already made me question everything, so maybe I was overthinking. But then my girlfriend started acting differently. She wasn't ignoring me, but she wasn't the same either. She would take longer to reply to my messages. When we were together, she seemed distracted, like her mind was somewhere else. Conversations felt forced, like she was waiting for me to stop talking. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, but the feeling wouldn't go away. One night, we were supposed to meet up, but she canceled last minute. She said she wasn't feeling well, which would have been fine if she hadn't been online the entire time, posting on social media like nothing was wrong. I didn't ask her about it. I wanted to believe it was just a coincidence, but then it happened again. And again. I noticed small things, too. She started keeping her phone face down whenever we were together. She would get notifications and quickly swipe them away without checking. If I asked what was up, she'd brush it off. I wasn't stupid. I knew the signs, but I didn't want to believe them. Not after everything else I had already been through. Then, one night, I finally got the truth. My parents had been quiet for days. I figured they were giving me space, or maybe they realized there was nothing they could say to fix things. But that night, I overheard them arguing. I wasn't trying to listen, but their voices were loud enough to hear from my room. They were talking about divorce. My dad was finally leaving my mom. I should have felt something, anger, relief, anything. But I was numb. And then, almost like the universe wanted to hit me with everything at once, I got a message from a friend. He told me he had seen my girlfriend with Matt. Not once, not twice, but multiple times. And not just talking. They were together. Alone. I didn't even need to ask him for details. I already knew the moment I read the message. Everything around me seemed to stop. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. My friend didn't send any photos, no proof, but he didn't need to. I trusted him more than I trusted her. And after everything that had already happened, I knew the truth before I even asked for it. My girlfriend, no, my ex-girlfriend, had been seeing Matt behind my back. The same person who had already destroyed my family was now taking this from me too. I sat there for a long time, trying to process it. I thought about all the times she had been acting distant, all the times she had canceled plans, the way she hid her phone. It had been right in front of me the whole time, and I ignored it because I didn't want to believe it could happen again. But it did. I didn't text her. I didn't call her. I wasn't going to give her the chance to lie to my face. Instead, I got in my car and drove straight to her place. When I got there, I saw her car in the driveway. I knocked on the door. She answered, and for a second, she looked surprised. Then guilty. That was all I needed to see. I told her I knew. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask for an explanation. There was nothing she could say that would change what she had done. She didn't try to deny it. She hesitated, looking for the right words, but there were none. I turned around and walked away. I blocked her number before I even left her street. I deleted every photo, every message, everything that tied me to her. I wasn't going to sit around and listen to her excuses. She had made her choice, just like Matt had. When I got home, I sat in my car for a while, gripping the wheel, staring at nothing. First my mom, then my dad, then my best friend. Now my girlfriend. It felt like every part of my life had collapsed in just a matter of weeks. I had nothing left. No trust, no friendships, no relationships. And somehow, Matt had one again after I found out about my girlfriend and Matt. I didn't talk to anyone for days. I ignored every call, every text. I barely left my room. I felt like a fool. I had spent years trusting people who didn't deserve it. My mom betrayed my dad. My dad forgave her like it meant nothing. My best friend slept with her and then went after my girlfriend. And she let him. I tried to understand why. Maybe Matt wanted to prove that he could take anything from me. Maybe my girlfriend was just weak and fell for his manipulation. Maybe my mom had set the whole example for how betrayal could be forgiven. Or maybe none of it mattered. I thought about texting Matt, showing up at his place, demanding answers. But what was the point? There was nothing he could say that would make it better. He didn't care about what he had done. He had already moved on, and I was the one sitting in my room, letting it eat me alive. I thought about my dad, the man I had lost all respect for when he forgave my mom. Maybe he forgave her because he was afraid of what would happen if he didn't. He chose to hold on to what little he had left, even if it meant swallowing his pride. But I wasn't like him. I couldn't live that way. That's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to let these people have any more control over my life. I wasn't going to sit around feeling sorry for myself while they moved forward like nothing had happened. I blocked every single person who had betrayed me. My mom, my dad, Matt, my ex. I didn't want explanations. I didn't want apologies. I wanted distance. I started looking for my own place. I needed to get away from that house, from everything that reminded me of what had happened. I wasn't sure what was next. But I knew one thing. I was done letting these people be part of my life. Cutting them off didn't erase what happened. It didn't make the anger disappear. It didn't undo the betrayal. But at least it gave me space to breathe. I packed up my things and left my parents' house within a week. My dad didn't try to stop me. My mom didn't either. If she felt guilty, she didn't show it. Maybe she thought things would go back to normal one day, just like they had with my dad. But she was wrong. I found a small apartment across town and moved in alone. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I didn't have to hear my dad pretending everything was fine or see my mom acting like nothing had happened. I didn't have to risk running into Matt or my ex. I could finally exist without being reminded of them every second of the day. For a while, I kept to myself. I focused on work, on saving money, on trying to rebuild my life. But no matter how much I distracted myself, the thoughts crept in at night. What if I had never found out? What if I had never walked into Matt's house that night? Would they have kept going, lying to my face for months, maybe even years? The worst part wasn't even what they did. It was that I knew they didn't regret it. My dad forgave my mom. Matt had already replaced me. My ex had moved on without a second thought. None of them lost anything. I was the only one left picking up the pieces. I wanted to move on, but I didn't know how. People always say that time heals everything, but they don't tell you how much time. How long do you have to sit with this before it stops feeling like a fresh wound? A month? A year? A lifetime? One day, I heard from a mutual friend that Matt and my ex were officially together. It shouldn't have hurt. I had already assumed as much. But seeing it confirmed still hit like a punch to the gut. They got what they wanted. And I was still here, trying to figure out what came next. Hearing that Matt and my ex were together should have been the final blow, but it wasn't. It just confirmed what I already knew. They had moved on without any guilt, without consequences. Meanwhile, I was stuck trying to piece my life back together, wondering if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. I wanted to be done with them. I wanted to forget their names, their faces, the way they made me feel. But how do you erase people who were once such a big part of your life? I couldn't. The memories were still there, whether I wanted them or not. Some days, the anger took over. I wanted to call Matt, to tell him exactly what I thought of him. I wanted to confront my ex and ask her if she ever cared about me at all. I wanted to ask my dad how he could be so weak, how he could look at my mom every day and pretend like nothing happened. But I didn't. Because none of it would change anything. I kept moving forward, even if it didn't feel like progress. I worked. I saved money. I kept to myself. I didn't date. I didn't trust easily. I didn't let people get close. Maybe that wasn't healthy, but it was the only way I knew how to protect myself. I still think about what happened. Maybe one day, I won't. Maybe one day, I'll meet someone who makes me believe in people again. Maybe I'll look back on this as just a bad chapter in my life instead of the moment everything fell apart. But right now, I don't know how to get there. Has anyone been through something like this? How do you move on when the people who hurt you don't even care?